Man, this stuff just won't go away, man. You either have the Big 12 people out there doing their little podcast, stalking Oklahoma and sometimes Texas, but mostly Oklahoma for whatever reason. And now you have even some of the Oklahoma podcasters, some of the people part of that Bush League network called Locked On, who continually puts people out there that say stuff that's just not accurate. So I'm going to have to throw them on the grill again. Let's talk about it. Here we go again, riding on in on like that old great White Snake song, and here they come, riding on in. It's the Outlaw Posse, now in effect. And today's four horsemen shout-outs go to Richard Burton, Tim Gillespie, Bay Sooner, and Brad Friend are mounted up and saddled up and ready to go, and they're going to help us with today's college football invasion. And if you ever want to be on the show or give me an idea for the show, hit me up in DMs on X at OCF Productions, because this is the home of the Common Joe and the Common Sally in the know, even more so than all those media talking heads. Now, getting right to it here. Talked about this a few days ago, man, but it seems like the Locked On 132,000 sport team channel, probably one of the biggest Bush League channels of all time, man. These networks think, it's like Voice of College Football. They think making all these channels for one team is for some reason going to make them the next ESPN, I guess. I don't know. But all I know is most of it is it's pretty watered down, and a lot of it to me is weak sauce stuff. And a lot of the stuff they say on these Locked On channels, in my opinion, are not very factual, and they don't do their research. They just get on there, in my opinion, just throw shit against the wall. And that's what's been happening with these Big 12 people, and even some of the Oklahoma podcasters out there with this whole Oklahoma going back to the Big 12 thing. And I just don't see Oklahoma going back to the Big 12 from the SEC. I just don't see it happening. Now, it could happen. I mean, I've seen a lot of crazy things happen in the last 15 to 20 years in college football. So, and it might not be a bad thing for Oklahoma to go back to the Big 12. But I just don't see it happen. And for them to continue to pine about it, and even some of the Oklahoma guys getting sucked into it, like Locked On Sooners, who I'm about to bring up, it's just so weak, man. Now, let me bring it up for y'all right now. And we'll do a little interjecting on our part and do a little grilling on the side here, like we always do. This is John Williams and Jay Smith from Unfair Sports. And now, I know Unfair Sports is a big-time Oklahoma podcaster. A lot of y'all probably like him and stuff, so I might piss a few of y'all off, and you might unsubscribe, which ain't nothing new to me. I get unsubscribers all the time because people aren't able to have a disagreement with somebody without getting their feelings hurt and wetting their panties and losing their noodle and unsubscribing. But to me, Unfair Sports has gotten to be, he's got this look on his face sometimes, just this pompous little smile that just says, I know more than you, I'm better than you. That's just the way he comes across to me. But some of the stuff he says in this podcast today is just not accurate.
The Oklahoma Sooners getting that SEC benefit of the doubt a little bit. Now, they kind of earned their way in over the last 7 games with the way.
First of all, they didn't get an SEC doubt. The SEC did not help Oklahoma get in. He's about to say that he don't believe that was entirely the case, but he shouldn't have said it to begin with, because that's not the case. Last year, the Big 12, in my opinion, was probably considered the best college basketball conference, because Oklahoma didn't get in last year because I don't think they had enough quad one wins, which they were going to say in this podcast that they did, which they didn't.
They played, but The fact that 14 SEC teams make it in the tournament, Oklahoma being in a very similar position this last year and being a bubble team and not getting in, man, any talk about how the 2024 college football.
See that goofy ass smile? Look at him. I don't know what it is, man. For me, maybe I'm just being mean spirited today, but man, that shit's just goofy. It reminds me of R.J. Young. Everybody's like, well, R.J. Young went to Fox. He made it big time. Well, R.J. Young only made it big time, and he sold Oklahoma out, by the way. He never was really an Oklahoma fan. He used to be an Ohio State fan when he first started out, and then I think he went to Tulsa University or something. He used to be really big into Tulsa sports, and he basically sold Oklahoma out to get where he was at, and then he forgot Oklahoma. He don't even talk about Oklahoma anymore. And the only reason he was hired, this is going to piss some people off, is he was a BLM quota. And now they're starting to realize that, for some reason, they haven't realized it yet. But that's the only reason that R.J. Young still has a job at Fox is because he's a BLM quota, in my opinion. And a lot of people get mad when I bring up that BLM stuff, but all I did was try to help my minority friends out there. I got a lot of minority friends who even say the same thing I'm about to say. The BLM don't care about black folks. The BLM basically is a Marxist, money laundering, sex trafficking. That's the worst part of all. Sex trafficking organization that basically ripped black folks off. And people like RJ and maybe even Jay basically just rode along with it because they had the word black in it. Nick Saban did the same shit. But that's another topic for another day.
Ball season went, and Oklahoma going 6-7, going 2-6 in SEC play, and maybe they regret moving to the SEC. Oh my God, things would have been so much better in the Big 12. Nah. Listen, Oklahoma got that recruiting bump. Oklahoma's getting that SEC bump, not just in football, but basketball, women's basketball. It's going to happen in baseball and softball as well. Oklahoma doesn't regret anything.
Not at all. And, there's rumors out there that Oklahoma, that the Big 12 could be begging Oklahoma to try to come back and get that bump back on their side because, they need that relevance. But at the same time, I don't believe any of those rumors. There's also rumors that Oklahoma is exploring leaving the SEC to go to the Big 12, which I think is a bunch of hogwash as well.
Let me stop him right there for a second. Now, it is true. John Williams is true. And it is true that the recruiting did get a bump from being in the SEC. I really believe that. But as far as the other sports, I don't think Oklahoma really got a bump. Oklahoma was already great in softball. So to say they got a bump in softball is pretty ridiculous. Oklahoma didn't need a bump in their other sports. They were already great at softball and gymnastics and men's gymnastics and stuff like that.
Oklahoma is very happy where they are because, like you said, they're getting those additional bumps. Last year, Oklahoma finished 20-12 with some really high-quality quad 1 wins on the basketball.
That's incorrect. You can go back and do the research if you want to, but a lot of those wins weren't really high-quality wins. They might have been good wins, but they weren't as high quality as he makes it out to be. And that's not what kept Oklahoma out of the tournament last year because, as I just said, the SEC, this is the first year the SEC's been this dominant in basketball. This is something that don't normally happen. They act like this shit's been going on forever, and it hasn't. This is the first year that the SEC's been really dominant in basketball. Last year, the Big 12 was arguably the best conference in college basketball. So Oklahoma would have gotten a bump for that, but they didn't because the quality wins that he claims was there wasn't really there.
Side, and guess what? They got left out of the consideration when it came to going to the NCAA tournament. And then, of course, this year with them in Texas and the SEC, Texas gets into the playoffs, and then Oklahoma's looking to get their first one as an SEC member. They have a much better chance doing it here in the SEC than they do in the Big 12. And as much as Yermark wants to say that they're way more relevant, West Virginia just missed the tournament, and they're a basketball school. Sorry to say. That's what West Virginia is. They're a hoop squad. It's always what they've been. I mean, you think about Huggy Bear and all of his.
Let me put the brakes on once again. As you can tell by his facial expressions, he believes this to be a fact. Because Unfair Sports said it, It's got to be a fact. People think because these guys get on here and they got this elaborate network that they know what they're talking about and they're telling the truth the whole time. Hell, ESPN don't tell the truth the whole time. You think these guys do? Obviously, Jay here didn't do his research because West Virginia is not just a basketball school. While West Virginia has been really good in basketball, they've actually been closer, in my opinion, to winning a national championship in football a few times and more relevant in football than they are basketball. Look it up. West Virginia has the 15th highest. 15th highest. That's well into the top 20. 15th highest all-time winning percentage in college football, Jay. I would consider West Virginia is probably just as much a football school as a basketball school, if not more. But once again, you guys don't do your research. Now get on here, you get locked down in your head, lockjaw sports, whatever, you get locked in the head and think that something's a fact. You talk yourself into it, and then you say it, and everybody buys it. Well, it's not true.
His traps and everything. We know what West Virginia is. They're a hoops team. Guess what?
No, they're not. While I said just now, they are pretty good in basketball off and on. They're more of a football school, Jay. Do your research.
They didn't make the tournament. Now, you may say that it's because of ESPN and SEC bias. No. SEC is the toughest conference in basketball right now. Football and basketball. They're ones that you have to battle through in order and show that you're battle tested. Oklahoma went out and beat a Big Ten squad in Michigan who won the Big Ten, beat Arizona, who ended up as runner-ups.
And that's why, John Williams and Jay, that's why you made the tournament. Wasn't really an SEC bump. Give Oklahoma the credit they deserve all to themselves. Well, it's okay to be proud of being in the SEC because I'm an SEC guy too. This wasn't no SEC bump. This wasn't no SEC bias. That's what it sounds like when you say that. People that hate on the SEC, you're just giving them fuel for fire. You may not realize it. Y'all trying to be complimentary to the SEC in Oklahoma. I understand this. But at the same time, it's like you're not giving Oklahoma all the credit they deserve, in my opinion, Jay.
In the Big 12. So, when you look at the data itself, there's no reason for Oklahoma to even regret at all. But there is reason for the Big 12 to regret not fighting to keep a squad like Oklahoma, who brings such brand awareness to the conference. And, I mean, if the rumors are true that Mark may be trying to make a run back in Oklahoma to get them back with all of this crazy realignment, I don't see Oklahoma even considering or entertaining it. It just doesn't feel – it feels like the Big 12 has burned too many bridges for them to ever want to go back.
What bridge did the Big 12 burn? First of all, that's what I want to ask you because I haven't really looked into that. Now, I know the Big 12 did offer, I think, to do unequal revenue sharing with Texas and Oklahoma at one time, did they not? But to try to say that the Big 12 with Brett Yormark burnt too many bridges – Oklahoma's only been in the SEC for a year. Brett Yormark was only the commissioner for a couple of years when Oklahoma come in. He wasn't really there when all this crap was really done to Oklahoma and to Texas to some degree. So you really haven't given Brett Yormark, and I'm not trying to take up for the Big 12 here. It might sound like I am, but you're not really giving Brett Yormark a chance here. He never really got a chance to work with Oklahoma and Texas to really make a fair assessment of maybe him burning a bridge with Oklahoma or Texas. And you two guys asked why Oklahoma would want to go back to the Big 12. I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second because it would be easier for Oklahoma to probably get into the college football playoff if they were in the Big 12. And that might sound like the chicken shit way out, but it's also a smart thing to do. Bobby Bowden did it back in the day. Florida State and Miami were both approached by the SEC in the 1990s to come into the SEC, and they both opted for the ACC because they felt like they would have the conference affiliation that they needed, and at the same time, it wouldn't be such a hard road and they wouldn't get beat up on. It's not really chicken shit if you're basically going to hurt yourselves by having too many football powers in one conference. Now, I've said this ad nauseum. The SEC's got too many football powers. Last year was just an inkling of what's to come, probably. We all beat up on each other last year. Screwed my team out of the playoff. we beat Georgia, and we beat LSU, and we beat Auburn, but we lost to Oklahoma, who was, what was y'all, 6-6 at the time, or 5-6? And we lost to a Vanderbilt team that ended up 6-6, but we beat Georgia and LSU and Auburn. That's what the SEC's doing to itself. We got too many football powers. So if Oklahoma were to go back to the Big 12, I don't think it'd be a chicken shit thing to do. I just think it would be a smart thing to do to try to expand your portfolio a little bit. Now, while the SEC is great in basketball this year, it's not the norm, as I said before. It's not the norm. And the SEC needs to go out and get teams that are normally, traditionally great at other sports, not just football, because somebody's got to lose. And somebody's not going to be happy. A lot of these football powers aren't going to be happy when they start slipping. It's already had happened to Arkansas when they come from the Southwest Conference. They used to, them in Texas used to dominate the Southwest. So I think the SEC needs to expand. If they're going to expand next time, go out and get some schools that are traditionally strong in college basketball, men's basketball.
Well, and Oklahoma's just not a fit. It's not a fit anymore culturally.
How is that? How can they not be a fit culturally? Once again, this guy's just saying stuff, man. He's just throwing out pretty little adjectives and words and stuff that people just say all the time. They overuse the hell out of that word cultural. I hate that word culturally. It's just not the right culture. What is that, man? It's just a word that they just throw out there because they really can't think of nothing else to say.
No. It might have been a decade ago before realignment caused their former Big 8 foes to go to the Pac-12 and Nebraska to go to the Big 10. And when all of that went down and they lost their fellow blue blood to Nebraska because of terrible leadership.
How did that change them culturally? Nebraska went to the Big 10, not the SEC.
And terrible organization and terrible foresight and really trying to toe the line with Texas and give them the Longhorn Network. The Big 12 set themselves up. They played themselves. And so why would Oklahoma want to go back to a conference that lacks that foresight and that innovation and is having to go get?
They lack the innovation before your mark. Not trying to take it from Big 12, just saying. Now, this is the first thing that I really agree with him upon. Now, granted, your mark only had a couple of years to try to work this out. So I still think we're throwing your mark a little too much blame, considering he wasn't really around for a lot of that stuff that took place with the Big 12, Oklahoma and Texas. But I do agree that the Big 12 made a huge mistake before your mark. That being the key phrase here, by letting Texas have their own network. Because when you're in a conference, that means you share everything.
Conference that lacks that foresight and that innovation and is having to go get private equity money to try and be competitive.
The best ball has been shown on the court as well as on the field right now. OU women 3 seed hosting the regionals at Lloyd Noble. Wouldn't the Big 12 like to have that on their banner to say, yeah, we've got more basketball happening. The women are hosting them locally. They're not getting that either. It's all about what's going on here at the SEC. And look, I mean, your mark makes all these remarks on a regular basis about Oklahoma and Texas. He can't keep those schools out of his mouth, but it's okay because that's all Oklahoma. We can accept additional publicity from our quote unquote competition. The bitter X that saw us leave because didn't want to do anything to take care of us within the conference, especially bringing that brand power that Oklahoma always has. So when Oklahoma continues to rise up in all the other sports, listen to this, John. Let's talk about where Oklahoma's ranked in other sports.
All right, I'm going to stop him right there because he's just going to go on and ramble about how the softball team and the women's gymnastic team and all of them got this SEC bump, which they didn't. They were already great. Jay. Now, as far as the private equity thing, I'm sort of back and forth on that. They're trying to act like that this is a bad thing, that Big 12 is looking stupid for going out and asking for private equity money and begging for money. We might want to pump our brakes on that, because one day, when ESPN goes under, and they probably end up going under one day because they're not looking too good financially at ESPN or Disney. So let's not be too quick to be judgmental there, Jay Smith, because one day we might have to ask for private equity as well as the Big Ten to keep college football afloat. It would not surprise me if some of these Arabic companies that bought Live and got their own golf tournament and have bought numerous professional sports teams and even have their hands in professional wrestling, would not surprise me one day if their private equity money was involved in all of college football. And that's all I got to say about that. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Those are the big four, and they're all absolutely free. But if you want to do a little something extra and get your badge and get deputized and get a random Four Horsemen shout out like those guys did at the earlier part of the show, all you got to do is hit that join button over there by the subscribe button. It's not but $2.99 a month. That's just 75 cents a week. That's just a half a bottle of water for the Outlaw. Also, let me shout out to my sponsors over here. Moe's Woodsmith Shop made me this great cutting board over here. Never any lasers used. Anything you want on a piece of wood, Eric Mofield at Moe's Woodsmith Shop in the scroll down here can do that. Also, his wife is real big into handmade jewelry at paparazzi.com. Check her out. Also, we have McFab LLC with the powder-coated metal signage over there. You see the Outlaw peeking out from underneath the Sooner schooner over there. Check him out as well in the scroll. KMCA to all the other teams. Class is now officially dismissed.